Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Namaskaram. Today, I'm going to start by talking about verse 16 of Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu Anubandham. The idea in this verse is a continuation of what Bhagavan said in the previous verse that we talked about last month. So just to remind everyone, what he said in verse 15 is, not knowing the fact that they move by Shakti, that implies, here Shakti implies the divine power, namely Chit Shakti, the power of pure awareness. The buffoonery of lunatics who strive thus, we shall acquire all siddhis, is a match for the story of the lame person who said, if anyone helps me rise, what measure are these enemies? In other words, the implication of that is, if someone helps me stand, what are these enemies? I can easily defeat these enemies. He can't, that person can't even stand unaided, let alone defeat his enemies. Similar is the buffoonery of those lunatics or madmen who strive trying to acquire siddhis, not knowing the fact that we cannot do anything but by the fundamental power, the power of pure awareness, that the divine power, but which we misuse to know all these things and to try and achieve all these things in this world. So Bhagavan, in this series of verses, he's strongly condemning the folly of trying to acquire siddhis. Siddhis means, it means achievements or accomplishments, particularly in the sense of supernatural powers. Many people do various types of tapas, various yoga practices or mantra japa or various types of practices, not for the sake of annihilating ego, but for the sake of acquiring power. That is what Bhagavan is pointing out the folly of in these verses. What he says in verse 16 is, I'll first read the Tamil and then I'll explain the meaning. Chittatin Shanti Adai Siddhamam Mukti Yanil Siddhi Chittatin Sege Indri Siddhya Siddhigalil Chittam Seva Engan Chitta Kalakam Tir Mukti Sukham Toiva Mori. What this means is, since Chittatin Shanti means pacification of mind, since pacification of mind alone is liberation, which is accomplished, here which is accomplished, Siddhamam implies which is eternally accomplished, that because it's our real nature. Since pacification of mind alone is liberation, which is accomplished, how will those whose mind is yoked to siddhis, which are not accomplished without activity of the mind, immerse in the bliss of liberation, in which turbulence of mind has ceased? Say, Chittatin Shanti, the word Shanti, that is, Chitta Shanti is often translated as peace of mind, but peace of mind can often have quite a superficial meaning. If someone has been much troubled with something and they achieve peace of mind, that means they're pacified, they're somewhat, they achieve a more calm state of mind. That's often what, it often means a relative peace of mind. But that's not the peace of mind Bhagavan is talking about here. The word Shanti means peace in the sense of peace or pacification, in the sense of cessation or extinction. When a storm comes to an end, it is pacified, it ceases. That is the state of Shanti. Shanti, the word shanti is a noun but comes from the verb sam, which means sham, which means to be alleviated, be abated, to abate as a storm, to cease, to subside, to become calm. So here what Bhagavan means by chitta shanti, what he implies is the complete cessation of mind. In other words, manonasa is what he implies here by chitta shanti. So long as the mind is there, it's never perfectly peaceful, because the nature of the mind is to be constantly active. So what Bhagavan is talking about here is that state in which the mind is completely eradicated because of the eradication of its root, namely ego. So that such pacification, such cessation of mind alone is liberation. And that liberation is actually eternally accomplished because it's our real nature. It's nitya siddha. It's eternally accomplished because it's what we actually are. But why we seem to be bound now is because of the wrong identification, because we identify ourselves as I am this body. The appearance of bondage is here. So we are seeking liberation to be free of this seeming bondage. But once we attain liberation, we will recognize that we have always been liberated. That's the significance of those words, which is accomplished, siddhamam. So since pacification of mind alone is liberation, which is eternally accomplished, eternally is implied, how will those whose mind is yoked to siddhis? What he means by those whose mind is yoked to siddhis is those whose mind or will is set on achieving siddhis, acquiring siddhis. And as I said, siddhis means achievements or accomplishments in the broadest sense, but in this context, it's particularly referring to the Ashtasiddhis, the so-called eight so-called achievements, which are various forms of supernatural powers. So those siddhis, they cannot be accomplished or achieved without activity of the mind. That's what he says, chittatin sege. Sege means doing or activity of the mind. Without activity of the mind, you cannot achieve these siddhis. So if you set your heart on these siddhis, then how is it possible to immerse in the bliss of liberation in which turbulence of mind has ceased? So it's the meaning of this verse is quite simple and straightforward, but it's a very important point. So long as we are seeking, this is referring particularly to siddhis in the sense of supernatural powers, but we can take it in a broader sense, trying to achieve anything other than being as we actually are, is in order to achieve anything other than ourselves, we cannot achieve anything without activity of the mind. And so long as our mind is active, going outward, seeking this or that, this achievement or that achievement, we cannot attain liberation, which is possible only when, liberation is the state in which all activity of the mind ceases. So long as we set our heart on anything which requires activity of the mind, we can that desire for that thing will prevent us attaining liberation. So anyone, this is what Bhagavan indicated when as I mentioned last time, these verses were composed by Bhagavan, particularly with reference to Kavyaganta Ganapati Sastri, because he believed that he could do great good in the world if he achieved power. He had read him the Puranas and the Itihasas and so many other texts about the power of ancient sages. And he thought if he can attain such power, he could set the world to right. He could rectify all the problems in the world. So he no doubt had good intention, but he was deluded, because whatever is happening in the world is happening as it is meant to happen. As Bhagavan says in the 13th paragraph of Nana, when one Parameshwara Shakti is driving all karyas, that means when one supreme divine power is making everything happen as it's meant to happen, why should we, instead of yielding ourselves to it, be constantly thinking it's necessary to do like this, it's necessary to do like that? The world has always been full of problems. The world is not meant to be a perfect place. The world is karma bhumi. It's the place where we come to experience the fruit of our past karmas, and in the process of experiencing the fruit of our past karmas, we do fresh karma. So we need to, if we are wise, we will make use of the time we have here, not to do karma, not to try to achieve anything, but to turn back within and to subside back into our source in order to attain that chitta tinshanti, that state of cessation of mind. So because Kavyaganta had yoked his mind, had set his heart upon these siddhis, when news was brought to Bhagavan, but when the telegram was received by the ashram, but Kavyaganta had passed away in Sirsi at a relatively young age. I think he was just in his 50s. When this news was brought, when this news arrived in the ashram by telegram, someone asked Bhagavan, could he have attained mukti? And Bhagavan said his sankalpas were so strong, how could he? So that is what is when Bhagavan said that, he's alluding to what he wrote in this verse. So long as we yoke our mind to the achievement of siddhis, to the achievement of anything, of any type of worldly achievement, we cannot attain liberation. So the problem is our desire. When Bhagavan said his sankalpas were too strong, that meant his desires. He had too many strong wishes. I want to achieve this, and I want to rectify all the problems in the world. That may be well-intentioned, but it is a product of delusion. If we understand if we are wise, we will understand the world will always be as it is. So long as we rise as ego, we will see numerous other egos, and just like we are driven by desire, those other egos are driven by desire. So when desires are strong, it leads to people doing all types of activities which create all types of problems. Even supposing everyone behaved perfectly, which is never going to happen, but suppose we lived in a world where everyone behaved perfectly, still life is imperfect. We are born, we grow up, we grow old, we get disease, we die. This is just the nature of things, and natural calamities happen. So this world is not meant to be a perfect place. If we look for perfection outside, we will always be disappointed, because perfection doesn't lie in multiplicity. Perfection lies only in the state of oneness. And to achieve that state of oneness, we need to stop looking outwards and seeing all this multiplicity. We need to look within and see the one thing that actually exists, namely ourself as we actually are. As Bhagavan said in Nana, in the 7th paragraph, Yatharthamai Uڵḷadu Atma-vichara. What actually exists is only Atma-vichara. Atma-vichara means the real nature of ourself. In other words, ourself as we actually are. So what we actually are alone is what actually exists. And we can find that not by looking outwards, because so long as we look outwards, we see all this multiplicity. And so long as we see multiplicity, it all seems to be real. So we need to cease looking outwards. We need to look back within to see the one reality which is what we actually are. and we can see that only by looking within. So instead of engaging in activity of the mind, hoping to achieve this or that, we should turn within. To the extent to which we turn within, we will thereby subside. Because we who have risen, when we rise as ego. And the nature of ego, as Bhagavan points out, for example, in verse 25 of Uḷḷadu Nāṛpadu, the nature of ego is to rise, stand, and flourish by grasping form. Ego itself is a formless demon. That means ego has no form of its own, so ego doesn't seem to exist unless it grasps form, unless it takes the form of a body as I, and having taken the form of this body as I, this form of a body means the form of this body, which is a form of 5 sheaths. Having taken this as I, we are constantly, our mind is constantly grasping form. It means we're constantly attending to things other than ourselves. This is the food on which the mind lives. So that is the nature of mind, as I say, as Bhagavan implies in that verse, it's to rise, stand, and flourish by grasping form. In other words, by attending to things other than itself. But if instead of attending to other things, if it attends to itself, as he says in that verse, Tedinal otum pidicum, if sought, or more literally, if seeking, it takes flight. What does if seeking mean? That means if ego seeks to know its own reality by investigating who am I, it will take flight. That means it'll run away, it'll disappear. Because we seem to be ego only so long as we're grasping form. If instead of grasping form, we try to grasp ourselves, we will thereby subside and dissolve back into the source from which we have risen, which is our own being, which is the state of perfect peace, perfect calmness, because it's one alone without a second. So there's nothing to disturb that infinite peace, that infinite calmness of our own being. That is liberation. That state in which we cease to rise as ego by merging back into our being, and thereby being as we actually are. That alone is liberation. Trying to accomplish or achieve anything else is folly. That's what Bhagavan is implying in these verses.
So I'm looking at your translation of Chitta Shanti as pacification of mind. How did you arrive at that phrase?
I wanted to use the term cessation of mind. But because people generally associate Shanti with peace. So I didn't want to, in many other translations, it's simply put, since peace of mind alone is liberation. But what does that mean? Peace of mind implies, but there's a mind there to be at peace. But pacification of mind in the sense of the pacification of a storm. When a storm is pacified, it comes to an end, it ceases. So it's pacification in the sense of complete cessation. So I use the word pacification because Shanti means both peace and pacification, and it also means cessation. So I think cessation is the implication here. But because the word Shanti is generally associated with, generally translated in English as peace, I wanted a word that was that embraced both peace and cessation. So I thought pacification is the most appropriate. But I could equally well have translated it as cessation, because that is what is implied.
Okay. Which you mentioned in the explanatory paraphrase.
Yeah.
So, and then the next part, that's a question, right? It's basically...
Yeah, it's a rhetorical question.
Right. So how will those whose mind is attached to siddhis which are not accomplished
Yeah.
without activity of the mind, immerse in the bliss of liberation in which turbulence of the mind has ceased. Practically speaking, people would struggle with it, right? I mean, so they have to work day in, day out. They got to feed their family, make a living. All of that involves activities and, of course, accomplishments. They have to work their way up from a worker to a supervisor to a director or something. They get all these goals and so forth. How would they reconcile this? What are the practical tips that you would offer them?
Who has to do all these things? Who has to feed their family? Who has to improve their income? Who has to work their way up a corporate ladder or whatever?
Right.
It is the person we seem to be. So all these problems arise because of this false identification. I am this body. That false identification, that is ego, and that is what needs to be pacified. That is what needs to cease. So we have a choice. We can either continue rising as ego, and so long as we rise as ego, we are caught up in samsara. We live one life, and when that life comes to an end, we live another life, and then we live another life, and then we live another life. Our life in this world, as Bhagavan made clear, is just a dream. So, in other words, so long as we continue rising as ego, we will be dreaming one dream after another. And in this dream, all these things seem so important. I'm struggling financially, so I have to improve my income. I have to take care of my family. I have to do this. I have to do that. And in this way, so many lives have gone. But the fact is, as Bhagavan made clear, there is one Parameshwara Shakti which is driving all karyas. Driving all karyas means it's making everything happen as it's meant to happen. So it is not actually necessary for us to do anything, because whatever needs to be done by our mind, speech, or body, he will make us do. As Bhagavan says, Avarabha prarabdha prakaram adakanavan angangirindu artavipan, in the first sentence of the note he wrote for his mother. According to the destiny of each one, or so in accordance with the destiny of each one, he who is for that, meaning God or Guru, being there, meaning being in each place, implying being in the heart of each one of us, Artavipan will make us act. So if it is our destiny to have a family and to take care of our family, that will happen whether we try to achieve it or not. It's going to, if it's destined to happen, it's going to happen. So what Bhagavan means by prarabdha is everything is we are given to experience in this life. So in order to experience what we are to experience, certain actions are necessary on our part, or truly speaking, not on our part, on the part of our mind, speech, and body. They have to do certain actions in order to experience the fruit of our past karmas. We'll be made to do those actions. Our mind, speech, and body will be made to do those actions. But whatever we may be doing cannot obstruct being. Whatever we may be doing by mind, speech, or body, we exist and we are aware of our existence. So all we need to do is to try to hold on to our existence, our being, I am. That is what we need to hold on to. Everything else will happen as it's meant to happen. So we have to have great confidence in Bhagavan's words. And that confidence is born of clarity. The more we try to practice what Bhagavan has taught us, that is, the more we try to look within, the more we will thereby be by looking within, we are, so to speak, bathing in clarity. That is our own being, this awareness I am. This is clarity itself. So the more we attend to our being, the more we are bathing in clarity, and thereby our mind is being cleansed, it's being purified. And along with purification comes clarification. So things become clearer and clearer to us. So the more we put what Bhagavan has taught us into practice, the more clarity we'll get, and the more clarity we have, the more we will see clearly the truth of what Bhagavan has taught us. And when we see that clearly, we will understand things are happening, everything is happening as it's meant to happen. There's nothing we can do to change anything. As Bhagavan goes on to say in that note he wrote for his mother, Endrum naduvadadu, enmuyachikam naduvadu. That means what is never to happen will not happen in spite of any amount of effort. So we can want to achieve anything, we can try to achieve it, but we cannot achieve it unless it is what is destined to happen. And then he said the other side of the same coin, what is to happen will not stop in spite of any amount of obstruction. In other words, we have the freedom to want anything, and we have the freedom to try for anything, but we don't have the freedom to achieve anything except what is already destined for us to achieve. So trying to making effort to achieve anything other than knowing and being what we actually are is foolishness, because things are going to happen as they're meant to happen. The only wise use of our freedom is to turn our attention within and thereby to merge back into our being and thus be as we actually are.
Thank you, Michael. Sarah is asking,
making this effort to turn within is not going to obstruct what is meant to happen. It's going to happen anyway. So it makes no difference whether we continue struggling to achieve this or that, or turning within and trying to subside back it within. This is not going to change what is destined to happen outwardly. It will happen. But we will, by looking within, we are freeing ourselves from identification with what we now take ourselves to be. And when we're free of this identification, that is liberation. That is what Bhagavan means by chitta tinshanti, a cessation of mind or pacification of mind.
There's a question from Sarah. How does one know that attention to yourself is deep?
We are not here to measure how deep our attention is. All Bhagavan has asked us to do is to fix our mind on ourselves. Let us fix our mind on ourselves to the best of our ability. If we do so, the self-attentiveness will naturally grow deeper and deeper and deeper. What we can do is try our best to attend to ourselves. That's all we need to do. Everything else will be taken care of. So let's not worry about how deep our attention is. Let's just try to attend to ourselves as much as possible.
Okay. Is it okay if I
yes,
ask the question in another way? It'll help me with the practice. So I feel that I don't yet have the discipline to do a sitting meditation, right? I can't do it for longer than 10 to 15 minutes without getting frustrated.
Yeah.
So what I've taken to do is during the day at several points, when I remember and when I feel distressed, I try to do this thing where I try to turn inwards, right?
Yes.
Now, when that happens, I begin to do a sort of assessment of my character. It just happens so naturally because the moment you ask the question, who am I? It goes into other thoughts like, yeah, why do I act like that? Why did I just have that thought? And then that starts to feel like it's just regular, a self-evaluation of your character and your thoughts. And so then it doesn't, because in a lot of texts, texts and in various videos that I've seen of yours, you also talk about how remain deeply focused on the self.
Yes.
So I just want to try and understand that difference between that superficial level of, self-assessment versus self-inquiry.
Okay. So long as we're assessing ourselves in any way, the self we are assessing is not what we actually are. It's what we take ourselves to be. It's the person we take ourselves to be. When we think, why do I behave in this way? The I who is behaving is the I that is identifying itself as I am Sarah, I am Michael, I am whoever. So that is not self-investigation. What self-investigation, as Bhagavan says, it means fixing our mind on ourself. Ourself doesn't mean the person we take ourselves to be. Ourself means what we actually are. In other words, our own being. So all we are attend to is this fundamental awareness, I am. Can we in any way assess this awareness, I am? Anything that we assess is something other than ourselves. Because I am is the, as Bhagavan said, it's like the screen in the cinema. All sorts of pictures may appear on that screen. You can assess the pictures. You can be a film critic and you can write reviews of the films you see. But what can you say about the screen? All you can say, there was a screen there. If there hadn't been a screen, I wouldn't have been able to see the picture. So it's what we are to attend to is just that screen, that fundamental beingness, that fundamental awareness of our own being, I am. That's all we are to attend to. This assessing, so self-assessment is a diversion of our attention away from ourselves towards the person we take ourselves to be. So that's only feeding ego. Tending to anything other than our being is feeding ego.
Yeah. So then a better way to look at this is just to try and be pure awareness. Because I have seen that, at certain times, self-inquiry has been described as paying attention or turning inwards and staying with yourself. And other times it's staying as pure consciousness.
Both are one and the same. That is, so long as we attend to anything other than ourselves, we are rising as ego. In order to cease rising as ego, we need to attend to our own being. To the extent to which we attend to our own being, we as ego will thereby subside and be as we actually are. So self-attentiveness is the means to return to our natural state of just being.
Okay.
So it's, we can say it's two different ways of describing the same practice. Be as you are, just be, sumeru, and attend to yourself. Though the words are different, the meaning is the same. They're two different ways of pointing at the same practice. We can know ourselves only by being ourselves. And we can be what we actually are only by attending to ourselves. Because so long as we attend to anything other than ourselves, we are rising. In order to be, we need to attend to our being and nothing other than our being.
Okay, I've understood that, and thank you very much. But just a quick follow-up, if you can.
Yes, certainly.
Address that later, because I don't want to hold up the questions queue. And this may sound a bit silly, but the great challenge here is how do I make that or how do I increase that span of time that I remain fixed on myself?
Right. Okay. That's a very good question, and one that certainly needs to be answered now. Bhagavan often said, Bhakti is the mother of jnana. Why did he say that? Bhakti means love. And it is our desire to experience things other than ourselves that makes us rise and go outwards. So we will be willing to turn back within and to subside back into our being only to the extent to which we have all-consuming love just to be as we actually are. How do we acquire that love? This is where we come to, this is why Bhagavan talks about vasanas. Vasanas are inclinations. But Vishaya vasanas are the inclinations to seek happiness in anything other than ourselves. When you're assessing yourself, you're whether you're aware of it or not, you're seeking happiness in attending to things other than yourself. You're attending to this person, Sarah, and her good and bad qualities. This is all anyanatam. It's all attending to things other than ourselves. That is what Bhagavan refers to in verse 25 of Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu as grasping form. Attending to anything other than our being is grasping form. But the nature of vasanas is vasanas have no strength of their own. But what are vasanas? There are inclinations. They're the seeds that give rise to the likes, dislikes, desires, attachments, hopes, fears, and so on. So all these desires in their seed form are what are called vasanas. Vasanas gain strength to the extent to which we allow ourselves to be swayed by them. We can see this if we have some obsessive thought or some bad habit or something. The more we indulge in that obsessive thought or that bad habit, the stronger that inclination to dwell on that becomes. So there are two types of vasanas. There are the Vishaya vasanas, which is the inclination to seek happiness in anything other than ourselves. The opposite of Vishaya vasana is Sat vasana, the inclination to seek happiness in our own being. So when we are practicing self-attentiveness, we are thereby strengthening the Sat vasana, because we're every moment that we're attending to ourselves, we are thereby allowing ourselves to be swayed by the Sat vasana, the inclination to attend to our own being. And we are refraining from being swayed by the Vishaya vasanas. So every moment of self-attentiveness strengthens our Sat vasana and weakens our Vishaya vasanas. So patient and persistent practice is what is necessary. The more we practice, the more we will cultivate that love just to be as we actually are, to attend to nothing other than our being, in other words. So this is why Bhagavan emphasized the need for practice so much. In the 6th paragraph of Nana, when he's talking about the rising of other thoughts, rising of other thoughts doesn't mean just the mental chatter that's going on in our mind. According to Bhagavan, the whole world is nothing but thoughts. So the rising of thoughts means the diversion of our attention away from ourselves towards anything else. And he says, what's it matter however many thoughts rise? As and when each thought rises, if one investigates to whom did this rise, it will be clear to me. If one investigates who am I, the mind will return to its birthplace and the thought that had risen will subside. What he means there is very, very simple. Thoughts can rise only to the extent to which we attend to them. Because thoughts rise where? They arise in our awareness. So if we don't attend to them, they cannot rise. So whenever any thought rises, that means our attention is being diverted away from ourselves towards that thought. So in order to turn what we need to do is turn our attention away from the thought back towards our being. That's what Bhagavan means by investigating to whom. Because whatever may appear, to whom does it appear? It appears to me. So who is this I? That is, though Bhagavan put it in so many words, what he means by that is, whenever we notice that our attention has been diverted away from ourselves towards anything else, we need to turn our attention back to ourselves, the one to whom all these other things appear. When we turn our attention back to ourselves, that is what he means. Once we turn our attention back, so turning our attention back to ourselves is investigating to whom. And holding on to that self-attentiveness is what he means by investigating who am I. To the extent to which we hold on to that self-attentiveness, we thereby subside and return to our Pirapidam. Pirapidam means birthplace. What is our birthplace? Our being. So whenever our mind is diverted away from ourselves, we need to turn it back towards ourselves and thereby subside back into our being. When we attend only to ourselves, not only do we subside back into our being, but whatever had appeared will also subside, because nothing can exist if we don't attend to it. And then he says, Ipadi paraka paraka, when one practices and practices in this manner, manatiku tan pirapiditil tangi nikam shakti adikadikindradu. For the mind, the power to stand firmly established in its birthplace increases. So what is that power that he's referring to there? That is the power of love. That is the only power that can enable us to remain in our own being. And that power increases to the extent to which we practice this. So the only way to go deeper in our practice is to practice more and more and more. Let's not worry about how deep I've gone, because that's just another. We again thinking, dwelling on thoughts. All we need to be concerned about is to attend to our own being. That's not really, we shouldn't give a second thought to whether we're going deep enough or what. So long as we attend to our own being, we are on the right track. And if we persevere in whenever any thought of any kind whatsoever, including the thought of, am I going deep enough? Am I progressing or whatever? Instead of giving room to such thoughts, to whom are all these thoughts? To me, who am I? Turn our attention back to ourselves and hold on to that self-attentiveness. That is the only way to progress in this path. Because, as Bhagavan said, we cannot achieve this without that bhakti, without the love. And the only way to achieve the love is to persevere in this practice. So it's actually what Bhagavan has taught us is very, very simple. But of course, the practice is simple. Understanding the practice is simple. Putting it into practice seems difficult. It is, Bhagavan said even putting it into practice is actually easy, but it seems difficult because we still have strong Vishaya vasanas. So long as he says in the 11th paragraph, so long as Vishaya vasanas exist in the mind, so long the investigation who am I is necessary.
Thank you, Michael. That's
Right.
been very, very helpful.
Okay.
And Saran, you can ignore my second question because I think I can keep that for another session.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So Sukumar is asking a question related to your discussion of the verse. What we learned from Kavyakanta Ganapati Muni even though he was a devotee of Bhagavan and spent many years with Bhagavan, with that immense willpower, he could not subdue his inner struggles. What can our poor souls do or learn from this?
The mistake he made is the mistake we're all making. Seeking happiness in things other than ourselves, thinking that if we achieve this or if we achieve that, we'll be happy. Each one of us may think happiness lies in different things. He thought happiness lay in gaining powers and rectifying the problems of the world as he saw them. We may think happiness lies in other things, but we are all making the same fundamental mistake, looking for happiness in things other than ourselves. The only solution to this is to look for happiness within ourselves, to understand what Bhagavan says, that there's no happiness in any of the things of the world. That is, we're all under a delusion. If I have more money, I'll be happy. If I learn more, I'll be happy. We are all constantly, that is, all efforts of the mind, speech, and body are driven by this fundamental desire for happiness. Because this is, as Bhagavan made clear, our real nature is infinite happiness, infinite and eternal happiness. But when we rise as ego, we seem to have separated ourselves from our real nature. We seem to have separated ourselves from that infinite happiness that we actually are. So the very nature of ego is to be always dissatisfied. Nothing in this world can satisfy us. Whatever we may achieve, we will not find real abiding satisfaction in anything. If we want to find true satisfaction, that can be found only within. So Kaviraganta is not exceptional. I mean, we may not all be desiring powers like he was desiring, but fundamentally, we are making the same mistake that he was making, that all jivas, every jiva is making the same mistake, looking for happiness in things other than ourselves. Bhagavan has shown the way to rectify this problem, because Bhagavan has correctly diagnosed the root of the problem is our rising as ego. We rise as ego by grasping form, and we flourish as ego by grasping form. So instead of grasping form, we need to grasp ourself. Grasp ourself means grasp our own being. And this is the practice that Bhagavan has taught us. And this is the only way out of this mess we have got ourselves into.
Thank you, Michael.
So though this verse was written in the context of those who yoke their mind to siddhis in the sense of supernatural powers, the word siddhi, though in this context it means specifically supernatural powers, it also has a broader application, because siddhi means any achievement, any accomplishment is a siddhi. So getting a pay rise is a siddhi. Getting anything we achieve in this world is a siddhi in that broader sense. So trying to achieve anything other than being as we actually are this verse applies to trying to achieve anything other than just being as we actually are. So we shouldn't just take these verses or applying to those foolish people who seek supernatural powers. It equally well applies to us, right, who are seeking happiness in this or that. Because we will never achieve the happiness we are seeking in anything other than ourselves.
Beautiful. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you so much. So let's go to the next question here from Michael. Tomino, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correct. Is there a way that we can see that everything is a dream or an illusion?
So long as we see a dream, the dream seems to be real. That is the nature of a dream. If you want to see that it's all an illusion, let's not worry about this dream. Let it be real or let it be unreal, it doesn't matter. What we need to see is, who am I who am seeing all this? To whom does this dream appear? Only by seeing ourselves. Once we see what is real, then what is unreal will cease to exist. How to see that the snake is an illusion? So long as you see it as a snake, it looks very real. Only by looking at it carefully enough to see what it actually is, once you see what it actually is, you no longer see the illusion. That doesn't mean we should look at this world very carefully like scientists are doing, because this world appears only in the view of ego. So the root of this illusion is ego. So we cannot find the reality by looking outside. The reality lies within us. That's why Bhagavan's teachings are all about turning our attention away from what appears back towards the one to whom it all appears. This is why this teaching, to whom, is such an important teaching. Whatever may appear, to whom does it appear? Why does Bhagavan say that whatever appears is unreal? That is to help us to, because we are so enamored by what appears, but we want to constantly attend to it, to read the news or watch the news and to know what's happening in the world, what's happening all around us. The mind is constantly going out trying to feed on something. So Bhagavan said, this is all a dream. None of this is real. If you want to find the reality, you cannot find the reality of all these other things until you find the reality of yourself. When you find the reality of yourself, that reality, which is what you actually are, is what everything actually is. And that reality is one and indivisible. So we see that one reality as all this multiplicity, so long as we're looking outwards. We need to look within to see what we actually are. So long as we look outwards, it will continue seeming to be real.
Thank you, Michael.
What does real mean? Real means what actually exists, as opposed to what merely seems to exist. So long as we see anything, so long as we're aware of anything, it seems to us to exist. Because it seems to us to actually, though it doesn't actually exist, it seems to actually exist. So long as we see this appearance, it seems to us to be real. So what we need to do is to see what is actually real, namely our own being. When we see ourselves as we actually are, we will see but we alone are what actually exists. Nothing else exists at all. So all this appearance of multiplicity, it all appears only because we rise as ego. See, in waking and dream, we experience the appearance of multiplicity. In sleep, we do not experience any appearance of multiplicity whatsoever. What is the difference between these two states? In waking and dream, we've risen as ego. And it's only as ego that we see all this multiplicity. When we as ego subsides, all the multiplicity subsides along with us. So because we don't rise as ego in sleep, we just remain as we actually are, we experience nothing other than ourselves. So the root cause of all this appearance of diversity, of multiplicity, of all this manyness, plurality, the root cause is our rising as ego. So what we need to do is to put an end to our rising. And we can put an end to our rising only by holding on to our being. Is that a clear answer to your question?
Yes, thank you so much.
Right.
Thank you, Michael.
Right.
Both of you. So let me go to the next question here. Ram Tinati, do you want to ask your question?
Yes, thanks, Kumar. Michael, a couple questions. One is, Sarah was asking the question, I want to take one step more. When we keep going inside, it seems the thoughts are endless. And I continue to persist purely because of the power of the theory that Ramana has mentioned and through you, stating that if I keep on trying to investigate, then the thoughts, the attachment to the thoughts will disappear. The thoughts themselves may disappear, but importantly, I will be in the self, which is I will be in that state. But it still seems to be a theoretical construct at this point. And one of the things that results as a part of this is boredom, which is I'm able to sit multiple hours, but when I sit, there is a state of boredom where I'm trying to, my mind is thinking that as I'm doing the investigation, suddenly an experience should come out or what have you. So there is when that doesn't happen, there is a state of boredom I'm in. So the question here is, the persistence should happen regardless of how many thoughts come, because of just the theory at this point. And is boredom also a thought that comes?
Exactly. The boredom is a thought. Anything other than yourself is a thought. So long as you think thoughts keep on coming, you are not attending to yourself. If you attend to yourself, when you're really attending to yourself, there will be no thoughts. But what keeps on coming, even when we attend to ourselves, is the inclination to think about this or that. Those inclinations are what Bhagavan calls Vishaya Vasanas. As he says, even though Vishaya Vasanas, which come from time immemorial, rise in countless numbers like ocean waves, they will all cease. They will all come to an end when Swarupa Dhyana increases and increases. So to the extent to which we attend to ourselves, to that extent, the vasanas, that is, the vasanas can rise only when we allow our attention to go out away from ourselves. The vasanas are trying to rise and pull our attention away from ourselves. So long as we hold on to self-attentiveness, the vasanas cannot rise, and therefore thoughts cannot rise, because the thoughts are just the sprouting of the vasanas. So we need to try to hold on to self-attentiveness more and more and more. We may be able to hold on only for a few moments without our attention again getting distracted. Doesn't matter. Keep on trying. And slowly, slowly, as Bhagavan says, the power of the mind to remain in its birthplace will increase. So we just need to persevere in the practice.
And that is based on the power of the theory at this point, right? Since I did not experience.
It's not. If you've done even a little bit of practice, you should. That is, the practice confirms what you call the theory. It's not just theory. Theory means a speculative idea. Bhagavan has taught us certain fundamental principles. If we think about these, they make perfect sense. But if we want to verify whether this is actually the case, put it into practice. The proof of the pudding is in the eating. To the extent to which we practice this, the practice confirms and clarifies our understanding.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
very,
I've been doing.
it's very clear to the extent to which we attend to ourselves, there is no room for other thoughts to arise. But because we don't want to let go of all the other thoughts, this is why Bhagavan says Bhakti is the mother of jnana, because it's all a matter of will. What if the Vishaya vasanas, the inclinations, they're volitional inclinations, that is, they are liking to seek happiness in things other than ourselves. So long as we like to attend to anything other than ourselves, of course we have to struggle to attend to ourselves. But the more we attend to ourselves, the more of that liking to attend to other things will decrease, and the liking to attend to our being and thereby be as we actually are will increase. So it's all a matter of liking. What do we like? Do we like to rise or do we like to be? Unfortunately, our liking to rise is much stronger than our liking to be at present. That's why practice is necessary. Because the more we practice this, the more the liking just to be as we are will increase, and the liking to rise and know other things will decrease.
Well, so my liking, I don't know if I want to be within. I want to have permanent peace and happiness. That's my liking, and the other thing I believe that might be making it difficult is everyone around me that I see seem to be 95% going in one direction, and as a result, the mind gets vacillating. It vacillates whether it should go that way or it should go inward. But
it is not. We cannot blame others. It's because we have a liking to attend to others that we say, "Oh, all others are like to go outwards, so that's making me also like to go outwards." It's nothing to do with others. It's our own liking to go outwards that is the problem.
okay, sounds good. Kumar,
and we all say, "Yes, I want peace. I want happiness." But we look for it in the wrong direction. We continue looking for happiness outside. That means we still haven't really understood what Bhagavan has taught us. We may have conceptually understood, yes, there's no happiness in any of the things of the world. Happiness is our own real nature. If we had really understood that, why do we continue attending to the world? Why do we continue attending to anything other than ourselves? So our understanding is still very superficial. How to deepen that understanding? If we can deepen it only by practice. The more we practice, the more we will be firmly convinced that there's no happiness in anything in the world, and therefore we need to seek happiness only within ourselves. So this is a gradual process. The final thing, the annihilation of ego, that happens instantaneously. But make ourselves ready, willing to surrender this ego, is a process we have to go through.
Thanks,
and that
Michael.
process entails trying to be self-attentive as much as possible. That's all. It's extremely simple, what Bhagavan has taught us. Both what you call the theory, in other words, the principles he's taught us are very simple, very clear, very logical, very very much supported by our own experience. And the practice is extremely simple. We complicate it because we don't really want to do this. We don't really want to just be as we are. That's the whole problem.
Yeah, and there is really only one principle, right? To whom do these thoughts arise, and then investigate who that I is.
Yes, yeah. I mean, that is the practice. That is the practice.
Okay. Thanks, Kumar. Thanks, Michael.
Thank you, Ram. Yeah. Kathy asks, along those lines, is there ever success after perseverance?
The success lies in ceasing to rise as ego. So there's no one who achieves success, because the one who is seeking success, the annihilation of the one who is seeking success, that is success. And what then remains is what we always actually are, which never achieves anything, because it is always as it actually is. So yes, there is success at the end of the road, but we will not be there to say, oh, I have succeeded. Because so long as there's an I that's either seeking to succeed or that thinks I have succeeded, that I is ego. So we have not succeeded so long as that I is there. The pure I, the real I, doesn't want to succeed in anything. And for it, there can be no success, because it is just as it is. There's nothing for it to achieve. It is the infinite whole. What can it do? What is there for it to achieve?
If there's any doubt, Bhagavan did guarantee, right? So, Nichayam Urupaduvan.
Yes, yes.
We can translate that.
Bhagavan says, however great a sinner one may be, if instead of weeping, oh, I'm a sinner, how can I be saved? If one is steadfast in self-attentiveness, one will certainly be saved.
Right. Certainly be saved.
So success is assured.
Right.
But we will not be there to say, once the success is achieved, there'll be no I remaining to say, I have achieved success.
Thank you, Michael.
And according to Bhagavan, that success is here and now. It is nittamam. That is when he says siddhamam mukti, he means it's nitya siddha. It's eternally achieved. Because that is what we actually are.
Right. But is that evidence that it works other than Bhagavan? I think that's what you mean, right, Kathy? That if it works for someone other than Bhagavan,
it needs to. It needs to work for us. Whether it works for others is no concern of us. Does it work for us? We can verify that only by the practice. But it's not that we have to wait till the end before we are convinced that this works. The very practicing itself will confirm to us that we're on the right track.
me, Muruganar and Swami Sadhu Om come to mind. You know, she's asking, is there evidence that it worked for others?
Yes, but so long as we're asking about others, as Bhagavan said, that is an Atma-vichara. If we say Murugana had achieved or Sadhu Om had achieved, that's just a thought. That's just a belief. How can we know who has achieved when we don't even know what we are? How can we know about the state of others? So we need to stop looking at others. We need to, what Bhagavan asked us to find out is, who am I? Not who is he or who is she? So let everyone have achieved it, doesn't matter. We need to achieve it, and we can achieve it only by persevering in this practice. And the more we persevere in this practice, the more clarity we will get. And the more clarity we will get, along with that clarity will come the conviction.
Right. Thank you, Michael. So, Ravi Day, do you want to summarize your questions? I know you posted like 2 or 3, and I'll let you post it.
Sure.
Go ahead.
So, the first one that I asked is, how do you turn your mind inwards when you need the peace the most? That is, when your mind is disturbed. Is there a place of prayer when you lack the strength to turn inwards? Or the advice is to develop your self-attention muscle by practicing when the mind is undisturbed, like we do normally?
Prayer means the crying out of the heart, the yearning to be as we actually are. That is the true prayer. And that prayer, that yearning, is what motivates us to put this into practice. So truly speaking, the prayer and the practice are not two different things. Prayer is more than just words.
Right.
That is, Bhagavan has taught us to pray in word. That is, Bhagavan has given us words, but those words are showing us what we should be yearning for. The prayer is not just repeating the words. The prayer is the yearning for that. And that yearning is what drives our practice. So we shouldn't think of prayer as something separate from the practice. Prayer is what drives the practice. That yearning heart is what drives the practice.
In a sense, the prayer is a function of your senses, like you could
Not
say.
a function. It's a function of your will. It's the longing. It's the love for that. That is the true prayer. Some in Maharshi's Gospel or somewhere, it's recorded, but someone asked Bhagavan, then is no prayer necessary? Bhagavan is talking about the need for surrender. Then that person asked, then Bhagavan, is no prayer necessary? Bhagavan said, surrender is itself a mighty prayer. It is the greatest prayer of all.
Okay.
Because surrender means giving ourselves to God. We will give ourselves to God only if we have all-consuming love for God. God means for our own being. And that all-consuming love, that is the true prayer. So we shouldn't think of prayer and practice as two different things. They're two sides of the same coin. Trying to attend to ourselves is itself praying for that love to attend to ourselves.
So
if our prayers are sincere, we will be trying to put this into practice. Otherwise, if we're not trying to put this into practice, our prayers are just empty words.
Right. I think surrender is perhaps comes to the closest in my mind, or in my.
How to surrender?
Right.
What
You
is
say, thy will be. This is your
Exactly.
will. My distress is your will.
Exactly. That is. Surrender means giving ourselves to God. And how to give ourselves to God? So long as we attend to anything other than ourselves, we are rising and thereby seemingly separating ourselves from God. If we want to give ourselves to God, we need to subside back, because God is our own being. So giving ourselves to God means subsiding back into our own being. And we can subside back into our own being only by holding on to our being. By being self-attentive, that is the means to surrender ourselves. So attending to ourselves, that is prayer, that is surrender, that is everything. As Bhagavan says, it's karma, bhakti, yoga, and jnana. He says in verse 10 of Upadesha and verse 14 of Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu Anubandham.
Now, if you have been practicing self-attention for a long time, does it get easier to drive these thoughts, surrender or inward?
It is easy. It is easy even now. Bhagavan said there's nothing easier than this. It seems to be difficult only because of our liking to attend to things other than ourselves.
But in moments of distress,
does it get easier? Does it seem to get easier? Not necessarily, because the more we have love to be as we actually are, the more we will feel that we are, the more clearly we will be aware of our failure to be as we actually are. So as we practice more and more, the love will grow more and more intense.
Mhm.
But the appearance of difficulty will disappear only along with ego. So long as there's ego, the very nature of ego is to go outward. So ego is what makes it seem difficult to go inwards.
Michael, but there are two different motivations to go outward. One is to seek pleasure, Vishaya Bhashana. And other thing is that you have distress. For example, physical pain, your accident, or a physical calamity that requires your attention to, secure your bodily existence. So that's the difference I'm trying to
it's
get
not
to.
it's not a difference. It's not a difference, because when you're in pain, you want to be free of the pain.
Right.
Seeking happiness and seeking to be free of pain are one and the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So there's only one reason for going outwards, because we still believe that our happiness or misery depends upon external things. Oh, I'm in pain. The pain is for whom? It's for the body and mind.
Right. Body.
So it's because of our identification with the body and mind that we say, oh, I'm in pain.
True.
So believing that either our happiness or our misery depends upon external circumstances is the fundamental mistake we're all making. As Bhagavan says, when the mind comes outwards, it experiences misery. When the mind comes outward, the world appears. When the world appears, the mind experiences misery. So it is miserable to attend to anything other than ourselves. But we are still so foolish. We are still, in spite of having experienced so much misery from by attending to other things, we still hope, oh, but if I get this, I'll be happy. If I get that, I'll be happy. If I'm relieved of this pain, I'll be happy.
Right. Yeah, makes sense. So that's a good segue to the next question that also relates to what you explained earlier. So how does one develop this unshakable inner conviction that the world is nothing but thoughts or is false?
The answer to all such questions is more and more practice. That is, the more we practice this, the more clarity we will get. And the more clarity we will get, the more we will see that there's no happiness at all in any phenomena. Happiness lies only in our own being.
So is this conviction gradual or sudden?
The clarity grows as we go deeper. And along with the clarity comes the conviction. The conviction is the effect of clarity. It's only when we see clearly that we will be convinced. But what is sudden is the final dawn of clarity, when that clarity becomes so intense it swallows us.
So it becomes permanent at that point. Otherwise, it's temporary.
Yes. Well, it is always permanent, but we will lose ourselves in that, and then we will find that it was eternally as it is. It's not something newly achieved. As Bhagavan said, if jnana was something to newly achieve, it would sooner or later be lost. But jnana is our own real nature. Even now we are that.
Right. It's unveiled or whatever because of our false conviction.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you.
So the unveiling would be permanent in some sense.
Not in some sense. It is in every sense.
Yeah. Okay. In every sense,
because
the
whole problem is our rising as ego. When rising of ego will come to an end only when we are swallowed entirely in that infinite light of pure awareness.
Right. So thank you so very much. And just one last one is a comment that one takeaway I have is your pointer today. Grasp your being rather than your thoughts. That's
Yes.
really good.
That's what Bhagavan's teachings are all about.
Right.
Holding on to our own being.
Yeah, but that's I will use that as my pointers to get into
And
self-attention.
to the extent to which we hold on to our being, we thereby subside in our being and thereby
Right.
be as we actually are.
Right. No,
Yeah.
that's a great way to think of, put it.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Ravi. So we'll last couple of questions. Sadasiva is asking, while abiding in self, is it grace which determines the inner capacity or depth?
Grace, Bhagavan said, grace is the beginning, the middle, and the end. Because grace, what is grace? What is Bhagavan's grace? Bhagavan's grace is his infinite love. Bhagavan doesn't see us as other than himself. Because he alone exists, he sees us as himself. Because he sees us as himself, he loves us as himself. And that infinite love that he has for us is what we experience as grace. And grace is what gives us the love to turn within. So we wouldn't even begin on this path without grace. But as Bhagavan said, grace is not something external. It's not something that's going to descend from heaven. Grace is ever there in our heart. So we have to yield ourselves to that grace by turning within. That grace is always pulling us, but we are resisting it by rushing outwards. We need to yield ourselves and allow ourselves to be pulled within.
Thank you, Michael.
And that grace is what manifests in us as the love to turn within. Grace and bhakti are not two different things. Grace, bhakti is the manifestation of grace in the heart of the devotee. Bhakti means the love to turn within and to surrender ourselves completely.
Right. And Michael Fenton says, success in this path, complete and total surrender.
Yes. Complete and total surrender and annihilation of ego are one and the same thing.
Right.
That is, ego will not be annihilated until we are willing to surrender ourselves.
And a question from a devotee here. Hello, Michael. I wanted to ask your advice. I'm going to Arunachal in 15 days for 1 month. My purpose is to immerse myself in the self as much as I can and give myself to that power. What advice can you give me to take advantage of the power of Arunachala?
Just go there with an open heart and Bhagavan is showing the way. It is Bhagavan who has brought us to where we are now. And having brought us to where we are now, he will continue guiding us unfailingly. So that same power that has given you the liking to go to Tiruvannamalai, that same power will guide you both when you are there and when you cease to be there. Whether we are here or there, that power is always guiding us. But there is something special about that place. So when we have the opportunity to go there, let us go there just with an open heart. We shouldn't have any high expectations or anything. We just go there to be with our Bhagavan is our mother and father. We go there just to be with him. That's all that matters.
Thank you, Michael.
Right.
I'm really going with a lot of love to surrender. I speak Spanish, but it's that's the love and the devotion that I want to really go there and immerse in the self as much as I can.
That love is Bhagavan.
Mm.
Whatever love we feel in our heart, that is the true form of Bhagavan. So that love is what has brought you to where you are now, and that love will take you back to your eternal home, your
Thank
own being.
Thank you very much.
Right.
Thank you. So, Richard, do you want to ask your question? Maybe better if you frame it.
If we realize that the body is mind, it's the ego, and we're stuck there. I mean, I guess you've answered it in saying that continue turning within with the love for turning within would be the grace.
Yes. That is body and mind. That is mind in the sense of the word mind, but as Bhagavan clarified in verse 18 of Upadeshundya, mind is often used as a collective name for the totality of all thoughts. But of all those thoughts, the root thought is the thought I, that is ego. So what the mind essentially is ego. That is, all the other thoughts that constitute the mind appear only in the view of ego. So without ego, there's no other thoughts. So when we use the word mind, we can be referring to mind as all the other thoughts. In that sense, the mind is a kosha, it is a sheath. And what Bhagavan referred to as body is a collective name for all five sheaths. That is the physical form of the body, the life that animates it, the mind in the sense of the grosser functions of the mind, the perceptions, memories, thoughts, feelings, emotions, and so on. That's what's called the Manamaya kosha, a sheath composed of mind. Subtler than that is the intellect, and subtler than that is the will. So these make up the five sheaths, which we experience collectively as I. But though ego identifies itself with all these five sheaths, let's call these five sheaths the person, because the person we seem to be consists of these five sheaths. Though ego is aware of itself as I am this person is not ego. Ego is the I that is aware of itself as I am this person, because the person, these five sheaths, consisting of these five sheaths, is jada. That means it's devoid of awareness. So we need to distinguish ego from all the five sheaths that it takes itself to be. And what we need to investigate is just this ego. The I that is aware of itself as I am this body. So ego is that adjunct conflated awareness, I am this person, I am this body. But when we're investigating ego, we're not investigating the adjunct, namely the person we seem to be, the five sheaths. We're investigating only the I. So what is sometimes described as holding on to ego or investigating ego is actually holding on to our own being. As Bhagavan says in Maharsha's Gospel, in your investigation into the source of the ahamvriti means I thought, it's another name for ego. In your investigation into the source of the ahamvriti, you take the essential chit aspect of ego. That means the awareness and being are one and the same. So it's just that what we are trying to hold on to is our being awareness. To the extent to which we hold on to our being awareness, I am, we thereby cease holding on to these adjuncts, these five sheaths that we now take ourselves to be. So these five, since we're not holding on to them, they will drop off and the pure I alone will remain. There are not two I's, a big I and a small I, a real I and an unreal I. There's only one I. When that same I remains as it is in its pure condition, That is Brahman. That is the ultimate reality. That is what we actually are. When it is seemingly mixed and conflated with adjuncts, that is what is called ego. But it's the same I. So all we need to do is to hold on to that I. Thereby we subside back into that I is our being. By holding on to it, we subside back into our being. All the adjuncts drop off and we remain as we actually are. Is that a clear answer to your question? Or?
That holding on is just the grace of being able to hold on.
That is the liking to hold on is the grace.
Thank you. Thank you.
Because the nature of ego is to like to hold on to other things. So any liking to hold on to our being cannot come from ego. It can only come from our own being, our own real nature. That is why it's called grace. That's why Bhagavan said, grace is the beginning, the middle, and the end. It's grace that draws us to this path. It's grace that leads us along this path. It's grace that motivates us to follow this path. And eventually it is grace that will swallow us. Because that grace is Bhagavan himself. And he is the infinite space of pure awareness, pure being. And that is what will swallow us. When we look within deep enough, we will lose ourselves in that.
Just continuing to turn within and persevere and persevere.
That's the only way. That's the only way.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. There was a comment. So that is that a practical significance to grace, as it is always there, and you just answered it. The liking, just the practical significance.
Yeah, that is grace manifests in us as the liking to turn within, the liking to persevere.
Right.
The effort we make to turn within, that is all the working of grace. People ask, is it achieved by grace or by effort? That is a meaningless question, because whatever effort we make to turn within is itself the working of grace. Without grace, we would have no liking to turn within at all.
Right. Thank you, Michael.